Hey, welcome to a video, everyone. I am super excited to bring to you the first deck tech for eBravo or Starvo that we're going to cover today. This one has some pretty big changes that I'm excited to go through. I made a post a little bit earlier today on Patreon, but first, just want to thank each and every one of you. Your support really means the world to me, and I'm so excited you got behind everything I've created here, and just very excited to bring tons of value to you over time and to get to know each and every one of you better. So for today's list, it's going to be quite different from what we looked at on the first day, and that's really due to the fact that it's extremely challenging and difficult to build this hero. I've been at the drawing board after about 3 hours of testing yesterday, just going back, changing things out. So I apologize if you were going through this deck earlier and it was a bit of a mess. It should be in a much better state now, and just want to go through kind of the general game plan with you, as well as the equipment set, kind of what to look out for in your own matchups. For right now, we're not going to go too in depth for the sideboarding guide, just because this deck's probably going to change a lot, even in the next week or so with Everfest release. And really, from what I've seen in my own testing and in my conversation with Kale McCreath, this is really going to be a hero that's going to reward players who design it specifically to tackle a very specific meta that they have in mind. And until we actually see that meta start to emerge, Starvo may not be the best choice for you at the moment, but I think it's going to be a ton of fun to play. The skill ceiling is just going to be through the roof. So that's something we're going to look out for. But really just want to take you through the list here. We'll go through the cards, some of the core interactions, and then the general game plan. As the deck gets a little closer to being done, from there, that's when we'll really hit the sideboard guide and talk through some of that. But I'm also going to be working to capture some footage for me piloting this deck, which hope to have up in the next couple of days as able on the Patreon as well. So let's jump in. All right, so right off the bat, we'll go over the core equipment in the list. The weapon of choice here is going to be Winter's Whale. Just super reliable, and even though we are a more earth-heavy list, swinging for 4 for 3, plus the ability to have a shield is just going to be really strong in this build. Ever since we got Oldham, I always wanted to use Winter's Whale in Bravo, and now we can. So the helmet of choice, then getting to the armor side, is actually going to be Arcanite Skullcap. And we're going with more of the fridge approach of just having some super dense armor rather than a bunch of defense reactions to lean on. And that's going to give us some more versatility in the deck, as well as allow us to take a more offensive approach to things. For the arm slot, we have Crater Fist, just super reliable, really high armor density, and sometimes the extra action to get the +2 and crush attacks may be relevant. Probably won't use this every game, but it's just something to keep in mind, and just a little bit of offensive utility that can be added in a pinch. For the chest equipment, we're going to be using Earthlore Bounty. We're still leveraging Toma Harvest in the list, and these two together can be extremely powerful, just drawing all those cards, creating all those surges. One thing I do want to note, though, is it's extremely difficult to go through or to always catch your triggers for this. So it's just something to be mindful of. I'm trying to build a muscle memory right now, but I found that at least once per game right now, I'm usually missing one of these triggers from my cards. So just try to be mindful of it so you can build that muscle memory early on before you take this to an event. Then we've got Mage Master Boots, which these are just going to enable the Tome of Fiendel combo. So you play the Tome from Arsenal, draw 2 cards, gain 2 life, create 2 Seismic Surge tokens. Just very strong, and while they don't have density, provide some life gain and draw power just to help with the overall strategy. So one of the biggest changes actually is that Rampart of Ram's Head has been moved to the sideboard instead of the main. We're actually going to be using Stalagmite now in the main board slate, and this is because it's just got extreme armor density. You don't have to have resources to block with it, and with the more aggressive approach we've taken for the deck, it just makes more sense to have in the slot, and the frostbite generated from this can actually add up in quite a big way. So you want to be a little bit strategic with how you choose to use these blocks, but in a lot of matchups, it's going to be extremely powerful. So altogether with this armor set, if you block well with the skull cap, it's going to be 12 points of armor. So you've got 3 from skull cap, 3 from crater fist, 3 from earthlord bounty, and then 3 from the stalagmite for 12 total. So now, once we've gone through the equipment set, obviously you'll see some null rune there for any of the arcane damage matchups, lanterns there for those as well. It's going to be extremely compelling item to use in any matchup where you're facing potentially more than one arcane damage at a time. And Heart of Ice is good against Prism just to put a little bit more pressure and make it a little bit more difficult for them to play their auras. So when we look at the main list, then this has been broken out. So if you see this little icon, if you're not familiar, these are the sideboard cards that have been designated. So we'll look more at the main list for now, and then, like I said, as we get a little closer to maybe the final version of this, that's when we'll start exploring the sideboard guide. So we'll start right at the top with Crippling Crush. Obviously, a very strong card for Bravo, and one that we actually want to play early on. You don't need to put Dominate on this, just use it early and often to pressure. Same with Enlightened Strike. This is usually gonna choose the Go Again mode, but depending on your situation, you may try to do either +2 or draw a card to put in an arsenal. This is just gonna allow us to generate a lot of pressure turn after turn. Oaken Old is one of the cards you're actually going to want to pitch early. We tried to defer all of the fusing and the Bravo hero text until the late game. Excuse me, and that really just lets us set up these powerful combos to close out the game and not have to worry so much about doing that earlier on. Pulse of Volt Haven, we've got all 3 pulses in the deck, but these are really going to be geared toward that strategy. You pitch these for the late game, combo your Oaken Olds, and everything else you're trying to do with the Bravo hero text, and just finish out strong. Pulverize is like Crippling Crush. You want to play this early and often. Extremely powerful card when you get this off. It's usually acts like a time walk, and that you're just going to eat your opponent's turn. They're not going to do anything meaningful in the next turn if you play this. Just be sure that you put this in your arsenal, you're doing it with intent, and you do everything you can to play that card. That means you either need to plan to use your equipment blocks or take 10 plus damage on that turn before you attack with this, just knowing that you're going to be able to do a 180 on the tempo and flip that in your favor when you attack. Pummel probably doesn't need any explanation, just a great card, still very good in this list, even though we're a little heavy on reds. Spinal Crush are in the sideboard for now. Might flip these back to the main board, but this one's definitely useful against a lot of the decks that lean on Go Again or multiple actions per turn. Zealous Belting is another classic from Old Bravo that joins us again, and this it just really enables Enlightened Strike to provide the Go Again package and just lots of value over time for what you're able to do. I'm going to start with Flash now. This is really a card that helps pad the yellow count a little bit in the case of a Prism matchup and gives us a little bit more access to Go Again on some of these turns. We have a lot of cards in the list, like Autumn's Touch, things like that, even some other attacks that we've added, like Heaven's Claw, and things like that, that are really just going to allow us to build some Go Again and go wide turns with Flash, thanks to the low cost of 0, plus the low cost of our attacks. Things like Evergreen, where you can pay 3 resources, these are going to be ideal targets for this. Next, we got Pulse of Candlehold, usually just a really strong fuse target in the late game for Bravo's hero ability. This one we're going to try to pitch early on so that we can have this for later when the fuse density is a lot better toward the late game there. Remember it, same kind of idea. Usually this is going to be used to pull back more offensive threats in the late game if our deck's running a little thin, but also just in the early game use it to pitch for resources, since really the cost of most of our cards are pretty low. At Tome, we've talked through this with The Mage Master Boots combo synergizes really well with the Earth Lore Bounty, drawing those additional cards there and even gaining some life. This can be used to set up some pretty big turns if you're able to put this into your arsenal and then combo off like that. So Autumn's Touch, not really much to say, just a block 3 elemental card. We have all three of these between Earth, Lightning, and Ice, just very good in the list. Awakening, we are a very Earth heavy list, so you're actually going to be able to fuse this more consistently. If you followed my Oldham deck where I wasn't really ever fusing this, it's quite a big change, but it just amplifies the power of this card in this build, and something that's really strong. So I'd encourage you to really use this too, especially if you have the fuse. Try to get Pulverize in play for just being down 5 life points total from your opponent, and you're going to see some pretty big results. This is a 2 of just because 3 is a little too much and it doesn't block. A Channel Lake Frigid, same thing, just a element card that blocks for 3, so it's in high demand in this list. It's a high quality card. Sometimes we'll have 2 ice cards in hand, so you can actually play this out for its effect, or just pitch it to Winter's Will when you need to swing the weapon to threaten a Frostbite. Next, we have Evergreen, which this honestly made this slot is a little bit flexible right now. We just wanted to raise the Earth count a little bit and have more element cards. Also, having a 5 power attack that's 3 cost just allows us to use Bravo's hero text in a pinch if we don't have access to Oaken Old or something better to swing with. Next, we have Glacial Footsteps, just a nice big blue attack. 6 cost, 3 block, 8 power. It's great for turning on Rouse the Ancients and just a high quality card in general, so that's why it's there. Heaven's Claw, 3 block, fuse card. Enough said there. Macho Grande, same thing as Glacial Footsteps, just a really big attack. Has Dominate, so this is actually a pretty good turn 1 play if you have it and you're on the play. Just able to hit your opponent, sneak some damage through if you have to, and just really generate a powerful offensive threat as a blue, so it's quite valuable. A Pulse of Eisenloft, obviously, just for fuse, as well as having the defense reaction in a pitch. This is a very strong card, and we do have enough ice and earth cards in the deck to really get some good value with this one blocking. So, a very strong card when used in this list for either fusing. I would try to pitch this early and often, and try to hold on to it so you can fuse your Oaken Olds in the late game if you can, because having the one card to pitch for Oaken Old and then fusing with this is just insanely powerful. Rouse the Ancients is enabled by a lot of cards. This is one I'm really excited for, especially since Pulverize turns it on all by itself. It's just insane if you have these 2 in your hand with another blue. So it just adds to the offensive threats and kind of the go-wide nature and aggression of this deck. So tomorrow is another Earth card, and also if you're able to play this from Arsenal, it will create a Seismic Surge from Earth Lore Bounty. Staunch Responses are in the board for maybe some bigger decks you may play against, like Brute or Guardian, some of the heavy hitters. It's just, in general, a pretty good inclusion. We opt for in the main list Turn Timber just because we're so earth heavy. A little more efficient for the cost, and so this is why we have this in the main list versus Staunch Response, but this is something to consider swapping in if you need it. We are so offensive, so that's the reason why there are no red defense reacts. And finally, Thunderquake. Well, not finally, but getting there. Thunderquake, another just big attack with Heave. This is 6 cost, so I actually do like putting this one in your arsenal. Even if you don't intend to play it, you'll be able to get it out reasonably well. So don't be afraid to heave this and then play something like a Crippling Crush. Tome of Harvest, very excited for this card. It's one that's going to gain a lot of synergy with the Earthlore Bounty here, and just drawing 3 cards, creating 3 surges, and digging deeper in the deck, it's very powerful. Getting toward the end, we have Turn Timber, which we've talked about a little bit already, and then we have Winter's Grasp as the last card as a 3 block element card, so very valuable. Good to pitch toward Winter's Wail and then use to fuse in the late game. So that's really the list for now. You'll see that this is broken out between core and sideboard cards. So I'd really just encourage you to get a feel for the core list right now. Just high level points again. Get aggressive with it. Come in with things like crippling crush and pulverize early on, using light and strike and zealous belting to kind of fill in the gaps there. Keep your opponent on the back foot and don't really let them hit you that often. So you'll find that you really don't need that many defense reactions if you can stick to this plan well. With the goal of blocking with some of your low quality cards, pitching a lot of these elemental cards that we're going to use to fuse both the Oaken Olds and fuse toward Bravo's hero text toward the end of the game to close it out. But really, the goal is toward the end, just either chaining back to back hero activations of Bravo or back to back Oaken Olds that are fused. It's just going to close out games on the spot. For defense, really lean into your equipment. We have 12 armor density with this equipment set, so it's pretty insane. Just block with that when you need to, especially on turns where you're setting up a pulverize. And really just try to keep a proactive game plan throughout where you're getting aggressive, you're playing out these power cards frequently, and just looking to maximize your damage output each turn. This is a lot more aggressive than most Guardian decks, so we need to play it that way in order to have success here. But thank you for watching the video. We will be back with more content directly to the Patreon, and I will be updating it with some of my testing footage as we go in the next few days. So stay tuned.